All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott from Jeff Teaches Programming. And in the last several videos, I've been taking the BMIGUI app that we created earlier and been adding a database component to it. Now, fortunately, unfortunately, whatever you want to say, I didn't put a lot of comments in here. So I thought what I'd do, kind of in lieu of comments, would be to go over this program and what it does, what it means, etc. So, with the using statements, we're not even using this one right here. It's grayed out. And technically, you could say we're not using the using system, but I like to keep that in there all the time because it's used to help identify basic .NET types, integer, etc. All right. Then we have using collections.generic. All right. Well, that allows you to use generic collections. In this case, in the case of the program we're doing, the generic collection is a list. Then we have using system.configuration, and that allows us to access configuration files, basically the app.config file that we're using. Finally, we've got using system.data.SQL client, and that allows us to use the different database connectivity classes that we've been using throughout this program. All right, so again, as it says, we're creating an SQL person repository here. And as I mentioned, all right, it's going to be responsible for not just storing, but also retrieving person data from our SQL server database. You can see that it implements all right, I didn't think you'd hear the clock going there, so I changed the comment a little bit just so it says this repository will store and retrieve person data in an SQL server database rather than the in-memory list that we have been doing. We're still going to use the list, but the idea is we're going to take what's in the list and copy it over to the database. All right. Also, as you can see, this implements the iPerson repository. All right. Meaning that everything that was iPerson repository, and let's just take a quick look. So do we have an iPerson repository here? There it is. And you can see that it has in it, that wasn't the repository, sorry. So iPerson repository has in it an add, a clear, and an is empty. And I should say an add, a get people, a clear, and an is empty. All right, which means that we need an add, a get people, a clear, and an is empty in this one as well. All right. So as we start going through here, you can see the first line that we have our constructor here. All right. And in our constructor, we've got connection string equals configuration manager dot connection strings, and then the name of our database dot connection string. So what this does is it stores the database connection string. Read only means it can only be assigned this one time. We can't change it, in other words, and we wouldn't want to anyway, but just for safety, we're doing that. All right. And we could have put this over multiple lines. I think it works just fine like that as well. So we could have hit enter here and then here as well. And the only reason I say that is it does make it a little bit easier to read. All right. Okay. Then we've got our add method. As it says, it's designed to add a person record to the SQL Server database. All right. The method requires an iPerson object containing the data that it stores. So what do we have here? Well, we talked about this a little, but let's talk about it in a little bit more depth and breadth of coverage. The first thing we do here is we create a new SQL connection object using the connection string. All right, the using statement, what that does is it makes sure the connection is automatically closed and disposed of even if an error occurs. So it's kind of a safety mechanism, for lack of better words. Then inside of that using, the first thing that you see in here, this is an SQL statement. All right. The SQL insert statement, it defines how the data will be added into the person BMI table. All right. And again, that starts with that @ sign, and the @ sign represents parameters, not literal values, meaning something that'll be passed in. All right. So we're going to insert into our table these values, and we're getting those values from the program. Okay. So these are the names of the values in the table, and these are what we're passing in. Now you'll notice the only one we're not touching in here is that date created, because that's automated for us. All right. Okay. Then we create an SQL command object, and that object, for lack of better words, kind of ties together the SQL statement and the database connection. All right. Then we open up our connection and we execute this non-query. Again, it's a non-query because an insert does not return any data. Okay, so that's the first one. Next, we've got get people, which, as it says, retrieves all person records from the SQL Server database. All right, and it returns them. So let's add this. And returns them, excuse me, and it returns them as a list of iPerson objects. Okay, so it's getting all the people that are in the list. And you can see the first thing we do is we create an empty list that'll be used to hold the people that are retrieved from the database. All right, then we've got a using statement. The first one there creates our SQL connection. Then we've got a query, the SQL query that'll select all the rows from the person BMI table, and it will automatically order them based on the date created column. Then we've got another using statement, which creates the SQL command that uses the query and the connection. We open that database connection, and we have yet another using statement. This statement executes the query and gets for us an SQL data reader object. The reader allows reading rows one at a time. And one of the reasons that we've got it in a while loop. So as long as there's records, keep reading. When we're all done, we return the populated list of people. All right. Next, we delete all the records from the person BMI table. We first again create a connection. Then we have the SQL statement that deletes every row in the table. All right, we come in and we create the command with the delete statement in it. We open the connection. We execute the delete command. Since no data is returned, we again have an execute non-query. Finally, we've got the isEmpty. It's a property. It's a getter. All right. It checks whether the person BMI table is empty or not. It returns true if there are 0 rows and false otherwise. That's the line that's right here. So again, we start out by creating our SQL connection in line 111 there. Then we've got the SQL query that counts how many rows exist in the table. Next, we use the SQL command with the count query. We open the database. We execute a scalar because it returns a single value, the number of rows that are currently in the table. Then we check that against 0. And that's pretty much it. Now, there is one thing I was thinking about that I believe I forgot to do in here. Okay, I'll go back and check my other set of notes here. I think what I'll do is I'll add these comments that I went back and wrote later. I think I will go back and add them. Okay, so it's a little bit easier for people to understand exactly what's going on. All right. All right, give me just a second to get my stuff together here and we'll finish this one up. All right, I believe there is only one more thing I'm going to have to do in here. First, because this is a class inside of my library, I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to build, make sure I don't have any errors in here. 7 succeeded. Well, that's good. So that's a good start there. And I'm going to close this. I'm going to close the app config. I'm going to close my form, but I do need to make one change. Seems minor, but it's not minor, in my BMI status file. So let's go to the code here. And where we initiate, or in right here, this iPerson repository, we want to change this. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to comment it out, and then I'm going to put it in again. Now, why would I do something like that? Well, give me a second and I'll try to explain why. All right, now what I want to do is I want to create the iPerson repository, but instead of it being a person repository, we want this to be an SQL person repository. There is no concrete in there. Okay? Which basically this says that we're using the database. Now, we now have two different repositories in here. One for non-database, which is now commented out, and one when we're using a database. So we really didn't make a lot of changes in here. All right. We did add a new file. We added the app.config file and the SQL person repository class. We just modified the FRM BMI stats file, but we didn't touch any of the other files. We didn't touch iPerson. We didn't touch person abstract, person concrete. We did not touch the iPerson repository. We did not touch the BMI abstract. We did not touch the BMI concrete, and we did not touch our startup form. But what have we gained from this, I guess? Well, we're hopefully going to have truly persistent storage in here. All right. We still are totally object-oriented programming compliant, which is good. We talked about using SQL. You got to see some of it in action, some of the stuff that we've been doing. All right. And what we're going to end up doing next is we're going to, you may or may not have noticed, but I mean, some of these things that we were doing in here, all right, some of these queries and the like, it seems like that was a lot of work, especially like when we added a record to the database. And there are better ways of doing it. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about something that's referred to as Entity Framework, or EF. We'll do that in the next lecture. I will come back in and put in the comments in the program, as I mentioned, but I just want to see if it works. So let's run it. Make sure it's our active project. All right, it's right here. Set as startup project. You've seen this already, but I'm going to bring this up again. And I just want you to realize that right now, okay, there is no data in here. Okay. So, I mean, again, you can see all the stuff that's here. Whoops. Let's see if I can make that smaller. There we go. That's what's in there, but we have not added any records. All right, there have not been any records added in here. So I think we can come up to our database here. I'm hoping we can. Let's see. And I'm going to try new query. And I'm going to literally say in here, select star from person, or BMI person, sorry, BMI person. And it's okay to do this all in lowercase. We could do it in uppercase as well, or mixed or whatever. But if I try to run this, and you run this by, where is it? Clicking right here. You notice it just comes back empty. So nothing has been saved. So let's see if we can put some data in there. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to go back to the program and I'm going to run the program. All right. Looks familiar. Show BMI. I'm not going to worry about testing. We haven't changed any of the internal logic. So for instance, if I click calculate here, you notice we still get the same errors we got before. But I'm going to put in the members of my family. So Jeff, Scott, 72, 225. And look what we got. Invalid object name, person BMI. Wow. Okay, well, I guess that shows us that even though the program compiled and everything, it doesn't like that line. So when we're doing that execute non-query right here, when we're attempting to add into person BMI, it's BMI person. That's what I think the problem is. Yep, it's BMI person. And I said person BMI. So let's go back to our code. And that was in what we just added here, which was SQL person repository. All right, let's look for every occurrence of it. Okay, so that should be BMI person. Do I have it anyplace else? I sure do. Anywhere else? Yup. Anywhere else? All right, so let's go back up to the top and make sure that it's not in there anyplace. Let's do a file, save all here. I don't want to save that query, so forget that. Just do a file. That's fine. And from up on top here, person BMI, is it in here anymore? It is not. But what we should do for safety's sake is we should go back and do another build and rebuild our solution. And that appears to have worked. This error that's in here is an old thing. Don't have to worry about that. It's from the 6th iteration. I don't care about that. Let's go back in again. So select show BMI. Again. All right. Not good, but you can see it. All right, so number 2. I don't have any idea what these actual heights and weights are supposed to be, so I'm just putting in whatever. Okay, I think I put one of each one in there, not even positive, so let's show all. So there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got an obese, an optimal, an overweight, an optimal, and an underweight. So that's good. All right, let's exit. Let's go back to here. And let's run this query again. In fact, what I'm going to do is just open it up again. I don't want to save it, but I am going to run it again. So, new query, select star from BMI person, run it, and, well, according to this, nothing was put in there. So I'm going to have to take a look at it. It worked in that the program still worked okay, but it didn't add anything to my database, and I'm going to have to check on that. All right, so I've got 2 things I want to do before I come back, or when I come back. That is, I want to find out what the error is, and I want to go back to this file, and I want to add more comments, the ones that I mentioned out loud to you. Okay, I'll be back to do that shortly.